In a sun-baked valley in Zimbabwe, a convoy of trucks rumbles out of a once quiet mining site, billowing dust as they haul away a large pile of pale grey rock. This rock is lithium ore, nicknamed white gold, and it has set off a modern-day scramble across Africa. In 2022, this formerly defunct emerald mine located in Mberengwa, Zimbabwe, witnessed a frantic lithium rush with an estimated 5,000 artisanal miners flooding into the mine after the discovery of lithium-rich rocks. These miners dug up chunks of the prized mineral to sell to foreign traders who continue to explore ways to take over the mines from the locals. Thousands of tons of raw lithium ore have since been trucked out of Zimbabwe despite a ban on unprocessed exports. Across Africa, similar things are unfolding as the world shifts toward clean energy and electric vehicles. The global demand for lithium, a critical ingredient in rechargeable batteries, has skyrocketed. This surge has turned parts of Africa into the latest frontier in a frenzied resource rush, echoing the historical scramble for Africa but with a 21st century twist. I want to show you what this quest for resource control means for local communities in these African countries. At the heart of this story is a bitter irony. The green energy revolution that promises a sustainable future is being powered by minerals unearthed in some of the world's poorest communities, often through exploitative and opaque practices. Lithium-ion batteries are essential for EVs, renewable energy storage, and consumer electronics, making lithium a strategic commodity in the fight against climate change. As a result, governments and corporations from global powers are racing to secure supplies of this metal. China, the world's dominant battery producer, has led the charge by investing heavily in African mines, while Western nations and companies belatedly joined the contest, worried about access to critical minerals for their industries. The resulting competition has set off a geopolitical great game for lithium akin to a new gold rush. Yet, on the ground in Africa, the picture is far from rosy. From Zimbabwe's hinterlands to the jungles of the Democratic Republic of Congo, from Namibia's deserts to Nigeria's farmlands, a pattern is emerging. Local miners and communities are often left with crumbs of the wealth extracted, while foreign investors and connected elites reap the windfalls. As is common in scenarios like this, corruption and scandal have trailed this lithium rush. Mining licenses are often secured by bribery. There are reports of covert export schemes and deals cut in backrooms that shortchange nations of their rightful earnings. That is the story I want to tell you today. The narrative behind African lithium, how the quest for clean energy is driving a scramble for mineral riches, and at what cost. We will explore 4 key case studies here: Zimbabwe, DRC, Namibia, and Nigeria, each offering a revealing window into the opportunities and perils of the lithium boom. This is the story of how powerful countries are racing to mine African lithium. This is the periodic table. If you didn't pay attention in science class, it won't make much sense to you at first, but I'll try to make this as simple as possible. Let's go. The periodic table is like a big chart or map that shows all the different types of building blocks that make up everything in the universe. These building blocks are called elements. Imagine you had a big box of Lego bricks. Each type of brick is different colors, shapes, and sizes. In the same way, elements are the basic bricks that everything is made of. Your body, water, air, even the stars. So, in simple terms, an element is a pure substance that can't be broken down into anything simpler. For example, when you hear of oxygen, represented on this table as O, it is simply the gas you breathe. Gold, represented as Au, is the shining metal used in jewelry. Iron, represented as Fe, is what makes up nails and many tools. There are over 100 different elements and each has a special name and symbol. So how is this table organized? Well, the periodic table organizes the elements in a way that shows their patterns and similarities. Rows from left to right are called periods. Elements in the same row slowly change their properties as you go across. While we have columns up and down are called groups or families. Elements in the same column act alike, like cousins in the same family. For example, all elements in the noble gas column, like helium and neon, don't like to mix with other elements. Yeah, we can call them weirdos, right? But why does this matter? Well, for starters, the periodic table helps scientists predict how elements will react with each other. Just like you know that sugar and water will mix, but oil and water won't, scientists can use the table to guess which elements will play nicely together. Now, let's come back home to our story about this element called lithium. When you zoom into this section of the table, you will find lithium, a light silvery metal. It is so light you could almost cut it with a butter knife and it will float on water, but it reacts quickly, so don't try this at home. Considering some of its properties, lithium has become like the energy superhero of our time. Companies use it to make rechargeable batteries, as lithium helps store a lot of energy in a small space. These are called lithium-ion batteries. With everyone trying to move away from fuels like petrol and gas because they pollute the planet, countries are turning their attention to lithium-ion batteries. These batteries power everything from smartphones to laptops, but most importantly, they power electric vehicles and grid-scale energy storage systems critical for a clean energy transition. And people are jumping on board. Since this technological breakthrough, EV sales have soared. Everyone wants to get their hands on that brand new Tesla. This has increased the global demand for lithium. According to the International Energy Agency, global lithium demand for clean technologies is projected to grow sixfold by 2035 to meet climate targets. However, despite its importance, lithium supply has historically been concentrated in just a few places. Countries like Australia, Chile, and China together accounted for over 90% of the world's lithium production in 2022. But these sources alone cannot quench the world's new thirst for the metal. As a result, manufacturers have turned their attention to new frontiers in search of fresh deposits. This is where Africa comes in, with the continent having now emerged as a prime target. Significant lithium resources have been identified in Zimbabwe, Namibia, DRC, Mali, Ghana, and beyond. For these African countries, lithium offers a tantalizing economic opportunity, a chance to diversify from other commodities and even leapfrog into higher value manufacturing. Nigeria, for example, is said to be sitting on a lithium gold mine. The same could be said for Zimbabwe or DRC, home to some of the continent's richest deposits. But simply having lithium in the ground is one thing, turning it into broad-based prosperity is another. While the raw ore fetched from African soil is sold cheaply by these countries, it gains value exponentially as it is processed into battery-grade chemicals and then assembled into batteries abroad. This means the real money is made further up the supply chain, mostly outside Africa, in countries that refine lithium and manufacture batteries. In other words, these countries come to Africa to source cheap lithium, then refine it into battery-grade chemicals abroad and make millions of dollars in profits. Yeah, the global lithium market size is huge. It was estimated at $28.08 billion in 2024 and is projected to reach $74.81 billion by 2030. Several major international players have since staked claims in Africa's lithium prospects. Chinese battery and mining giants like contemporary Amperex Technology Co. and Ganfeng Lithium have signed on to projects or partnership on the continent. Even Western firms are cautiously entering. For instance, London-listed Glencore has shown interest, and Tesla, the American EV company, reportedly sought to source Nigerian lithium directly. World powers now consider access to lithium a matter of energy security and industrial policy. This scramble for lithium could redefine geopolitical alliances as nations jockey for influence in resource-rich regions. Now, let me take you into specific stories from Zimbabwe, DRC, Namibia, and Nigeria. 4 countries at the center of Africa's lithium saga. Each illustrates a different side of the challenges and controversies that come with the lithium rush. We begin in Zimbabwe.
My question is, it is estimated that lithium deposits in Zimbabwe is well over 11 trillion.
Located in southern Africa, Zimbabwe has rapidly become the poster child of Africa's lithium scramble. Blessed with large hard rock lithium deposits, it has drawn significant investment and attention. In fact, Zimbabwe is already considered as Africa's largest lithium producer. The government of Zimbabwe sees lithium as a ticket to economic revival. But the reality on the ground is a complex tale of booms, elite capture, and external exploitation. Over the past few years, Chinese mining giants have poured money into Zimbabwe's lithium sector. Take for example, Zhejiang Huayu Cobalt bought the Acadia Lithium project, one of Africa's biggest, from Prospect Resources and its Zimbabwean partners for a reported $422 million in late 2021, and is now developing it into a major mine. The company invested an additional $300 million to build a processing plant with the capacity to treat 4.5 million tons of ore and produce 400,000 tons of lithium concentrate annually. This processing plant has already begun trial production. Another company, Sinomine Resource Group, acquired Bikita Minerals, Zimbabwe's oldest lithium mine, for $180 million. There was this other Chinese firm, Chengxin Lithium, also snapped up assets, bringing the total Chinese investment to roughly $678 million in a single year. These companies plan to mine and process lithium into concentrates, which would then be shipped to China for battery production. Their investments were explicitly given an exemption from certain export restrictions, as they committed to building local processing plants. But the most telling saga in Zimbabwe is not just about foreign companies. It's about what happened at Sandawana, a mine that became the center of domestic lithium rush and subsequent power struggle.
The resuscitation of Sandawana mine into a giant lithium project is transforming lives in Mberengwa district.
You see, Sandawana, located in Mberengwa district, was once famed for emeralds, but had been dormant for years. In 2022, rumors spread that its rocks contained high-grade lithium. Almost overnight, an estimated 5,000 artisanal miners swarmed the area in a frenzied lithium rush. These were ordinary Zimbabweans, villagers, unemployed youth, fortune seekers, all digging with shovels and bare hands. For a brief moment, it was like a modern-day gold rush. Piles of lithium-bearing stones were sold to traders who would smuggle the ore by truck into neighboring South Africa to bypass export controls. However, this chaotic boom had a dark side. With no regulation, the miners toiled in unsafe conditions. Pits lacked shoring and proper tools. A local NGO documented how there was no sanitation at Sandawana. There were reported instances of child labor and dangerous mining practices. In one incident, a tunnel collapsed, buried 9 miners alive, killing 1 in the process. In the end, the free-for-all just couldn't last. There was simply too much money at stake for powerful interests to ignore. Here was where the elites entered the ring. By late 2022, the Zimbabwean authorities stepped in, ostensibly to bring order. The government handed control of the Sandawana lithium fields to the Zimbabwe Miners Federation, led by Henrietta Rushwire, a politically connected figure and the president's niece. Under this new arrangement, only artisanal miners who registered and paid fees with ZMF could continue digging, and any lithium they produced had to be sold through ZMF channels. It was billed as a win-win situation. The government got to regulate the rush, improve safety, and ensure the country benefits. ZMF even called it an opportunity of a lifetime for small miners. But many on the ground saw it differently. Henrietta Rushwire, the president of ZMF, is not only connected to Zimbabwe's president, Emmerson Mnangagwa. Her name was already infamous in Zimbabwe for corruption allegations. She had been previously arrested for trying to smuggle 6 kg of gold in 2020 and implicated by an Al Jazeera investigation in 2023 in a gold money laundering scheme. Allegations she had denied, but which painted her as a key fixer in looting Zimbabwe's mineral wealth. Well, once ZMF took over, artisanal miners reported that the prices they received for lithium plummeted by 75%. In some cases, miners said the new operators simply confiscated their ore without full payment. One miner recounted how trucks from a company called Kovimba Mining House, which now held the claim to Sandawana, loaded all the lithium ore that the miners had extracted and disappeared into the night, even taking the miners' own shovels and tools. Kovimba Mining House is at the center of another intrigue. This firm was presented as a public-private partnership meant to run several mines for the benefit of Zimbabwe. But investigative reports have alleged that a certain Kudakwashe Tagwere, a shadowy businessman and known ally of the ruling party, is a hidden beneficiary of Kovimba. This man, often dubbed Queen Bee for his outsized influence, was sanctioned by the US in 2020 for corruption, accused of using his political connections to get sweetheart deals and then rewarding officials with luxury gifts. Officially, Tagwere's company Landela purchased Sandawana from the state in 2020 and later folded it into Kovimba. Kovimba's management denies Tagwere is still involved, but a 2021 investigation by the Century found multiple links between this man to Kovimba's ownership structure, often through offshore accounts and proxies. In fact, Sandawana's lithium came under the control of individuals who had a track record of opaque dealings. In December 2022, Zimbabwe's government had announced a bold policy claiming no lithium-bearing ores shall be exported from Zimbabwe without prior processing. But by 2023, evidence emerged that this ban was far from watertight. The Zimbabwe Independent newspaper reported that Zimbabwe Defense Industries, a military-owned company under US and EU sanctions, had been given a special waiver to export raw lithium ore to China from a mine in Masvingo province. And at Sandawana, Global Witness investigators uncovered documents showing massive exports of lithium ore despite the ban. In one instance, 30 tons of 2% grade lithium ore were trucked from Sandawana to a South African trading firm in September 2023. In total, at least 14,000 tons of lithium ore from Sandawana were shipped to Mozambique via Zimbabwe State Minerals Marketing Company (MMCZ). Notably, this state marketing company itself is a sanctioned entity tied to the regime. So, while Zimbabwe has world-class resources and a stated vision to benefit from them, the country is continually being shortchanged by powerful forces profiting through side deals. On one hand, Chinese-funded projects like Huayu's Acadia mine and Sinomine's Bikita mine are moving toward producing value-added lithium concentrate. On the other hand, politically connected companies have been allowed to simply ship out ore in raw form for quick cash, despite public promises to the contrary. And when we head over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the story is even worse.
This is one of the thousands of unregulated, unmonitored mines in the DRC.
The DRC already produces most of the world's cobalt, another battery metal, but its history with mining is marred by corruption and conflict. For lithium mining, we have to focus on this remote area called Manono in the southeast, where one of the world's largest untapped lithium deposits was discovered. Manono is a faded mining town in DRC's Tanganyika province, once known for tin production decades ago. Around 2016 to 2018, exploration by an Australian company, AVZ Minerals, confirmed that the Manono deposit is huge, estimated at over 400 million tons of lithium ore resources. It could be one of the largest lithium finds globally. A project called Datcom Mining SA was a joint venture AVZ held a majority stake at 75%, with the remainder owned by DRC's state mining company, Cominiere, and another private Congolese firm. When locals first heard of this giant mountain of lithium under their soil, they dreamed of the development it would bring to their long-forgotten region. But just like everything in the DRC, those dreams soon turned to nightmares. By 2021, as lithium prices climbed, AVZ was gearing up to develop the mine, but then the Congolese government stance abruptly shifted. In early 2022, Chinese mining giant Zijin Mining came into the picture. DRC authorities granted a new permit, PR 15775, over part of the Manono deposit to a separate entity called Manono Lithium SAS, which was a joint venture between Zijin and Cominiere. This move effectively sidelined AVZ despite its prior claims. The government accused AVZ of concealing some exploration data, which AVZ vehemently denied, and AVZ's application for a mining license stalled. By mid-2022, the tug-of-war over Manono's control was in full swing. AVZ's share prices plunged and trading was suspended. The company launched international arbitration to fight what it saw as an illegal expropriation. But the circumstances of Zijin's entry raised many questions. Why would DRC suddenly turn on its Australian partner in favor of a Chinese company? Well, investigative reports insinuated backdoor dealings. The DRC's own anti-corruption agency, IGF, later found that Cominiere had sold a 15% stake in the Manono project at a cut price to a Chinese entity, losing the state an estimated $120.7 million in value. This aligns with a pattern of undervalued sales in DRC's mining sector that have benefited private interests at the state's expense. Further investigations revealed a network of shell companies and middlemen that profited from the reshuffle. As much as $28 million in payments related to the project went to entities linked to individuals from former President Joseph Kabila's patronage network. It seemed like one giant bribery scheme. One key figure was Liseta Kabanga Shibwabwa, a former official in the presidency. She reportedly brokered the introduction of Zijin to Cominiere, and tellingly, she later became the chair of Cominiere's board. Such a revolving door suggests a conflict of interest, potentially using insider influence to benefit from the deal. Zijin itself tried to polish its image by pledging a large humanitarian donation in the DRC, $70 million for victims of violence in the conflict-torn East, to be funneled through the Manono joint venture. But African intelligence reported a scandal there too. Only $40 million reached the intended NGO, while a mysterious $30 million vanished from a transitional account. Notably, the NGO's president was also conveniently a member of Cominiere's board, suggesting the donation may have partly served as a kickback to insiders. On top of that, an advisor to President Felix Tshisekedi, Kabila's successor, was implicated. A senior figure in Tshisekedi's party allegedly received $1.6 million in commission when Zijin acquired its stake. This implies that even the current regime may have figures quietly benefiting from the scandal-ridden deal. This was despite Tshisekedi's public anti-corruption stance. For local Congolese citizens, these machinations are largely invisible, but the impact is tangible. Young people in Manono, eager for work, have seen no mining jobs materialize. Instead, some continue the old way, digging by hand for scraps of cassiterite, that is tin ore, to sell to traders, hoping to eke out a living while the big project is delayed by legal troubles. At the time of recording this, the Manono mine has been granted a mining license and construction is underway, including an accommodation camp and a solar farm. Zijin Mining plans to open the first Congolese lithium extraction project, with operations slated to begin in June 2026.
The recent discovery of one of the Earth's rare mineral resources, lithium, has sparked intense exploration interest among many.
And when we move down the southwest region of Africa, we find this country, Namibia, which has become another focal point in the African lithium rush, but with its own twist. Often lauded for good governance relative to other African mining states, Namibia has found itself grappling with a scandal involving a Chinese lithium miner that reads like a Wild West drama. It's a tale of fraudulent permits, environmental plunder, and community outrage. The central character is Zinfeng Investments, a Chinese-owned company. Namibia's lithium is primarily in pegmatite deposits stretching across its dry western regions. The metal was not historically mined at scale there, but as global lithium prices soared, exploration picked up. Namibia's government recognized the potential and, in an interesting geopolitical move, became the first African nation to sign a strategic critical minerals partnership with the European Union in 2022. The EU, eager to secure non-Chinese sources of battery metals, intends to support Namibia in developing its minerals like lithium in exchange for offtake agreements. Additionally, several Western and Australian companies began exploring Namibian lithium prospects, and local authorities insisted on local value addition as Namibia has a history of trying to add value to its minerals domestically. However, before any of the Western-linked projects took off, Zinfeng burst onto the scene. Zinfeng Investment is a subsidiary of Tangshan Zinfeng Lithium Co. from China, which itself has a large lithium processing plant in Hebei province. In short, Zinfeng had the expertise and capacity to export raw Namibian lithium and refine it back in China, a quick path from African mine to Chinese battery factory. Zinfeng's operation centered near the town of Uis, coincidentally an area where another company, Andrada Mining, formerly Afritin, UK listed, was also working on lithium as a byproduct of tin. Zinfeng initially appeared in Namibia as if it were a minor player. It acquired a prospecting license through a local entity called Orange River Mining. Prospecting licenses allow exploration but not full-scale mining. How Zinfeng got that license is the first scandal. According to investigative journalists at the Namibian newspaper, a technical advisor at the Ministry of Mines, Ralph Muyamba, orchestrated a scheme where he transferred Orange River Mining's ownership to his cousin, who then sold the company and its license to Zinfeng for $2.6 million. Court documents showed that Zinfeng agreed to pay the cousin about $300,000 once the deal went through. Money that was then distributed to individuals believed to be members of Muyamba's family. In other words, a government insider facilitated the sale of a mining license for personal gain. This was a textbook act of corruption. When this came to light, Muyamba resigned and was referred to the Anti-Corruption Commission. Of course, he denies any wrongdoing. Yet, that was just the beginning. With a prospecting license in hand, Zinfeng needed a way to start mining quickly. Namibian law reserves mining claims, essentially permits for small-scale mining, only for Namibian citizens, and these claims cover tiny areas, no more than 18 hectares each. But Zinfeng found a workaround. They set up a front, a Namibian-owned company named Longfire, whose director was also a shareholder in Zinfeng. In June 2022, this local proxy applied for 10 mining claims covering Zinfeng's area of interest. Each claim cost a mere $14, the standard fee for artisanal scale rights. By patching together 10 claims, Zinfeng effectively secured rights to a substantial lithium deposit at virtually no cost, and crucially without having to conduct an environmental impact assessment (IEA), as would be required for a full mining license. Armed with this paper shield, Zinfeng turned a supposedly small-scale operation into an industrial one overnight. Residents of Uis recount that starting in late 2022, they noticed daily convoys of heavy trucks coming from what was supposed to be a modest artisanal mining site. It quickly became apparent that Zinfeng was mining far beyond what their permits allowed, extracting and stockpiling thousands of tons of lithium ore. Community activists grew alarmed and began investigating. They suspected Zinfeng was illegally mining on neighboring land. This was in the Ringman area, and then sneaking the ore back to their licensed area to mix with legal ore. Namibia's Ministry of Mines and Energy launched a criminal investigation in December 2024 after a surprise inspection by Mining Commissioner Isabella Chiche found that Zincheng Investment had mixed thousands of metric tons of unprocessed lithium ore with legally mined ore at its facility in Uis. All operations were immediately halted. During meetings with officials, Zinfeng's management admitted guilt that their mining exceeded the approved scope of their license. This scandal likely aimed to avoid harsher repercussions, but the damage was already done. By early 2025, the scandal was front-page news in Namibia, fueling broader resentment toward Chinese mining companies seen as exploiting loopholes and local collaborators. On a positive note, Namibia did respond by investigating and halting the wrongdoing, showing that accountability is possible. Well, I wish the same can be said of Nigeria, a new frontier buried deep in chaos.
So it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the commissioning of the new lithium processing plant.
Known primarily as an oil giant, Nigeria has in recent years discovered significant lithium deposits across several states. Around 2018, prospectors and local miners began identifying lithium-rich pegmatites in central and northern Nigeria, notably in Plateau, Nasarawa, Kaduna, Kwara, but also in Ekiti and Oyo states. A Nigerian company announced finding 15,000 tons of commercial-grade lithium then, hinting at a larger untapped resource. Indeed, subsequent surveys have estimated Nigeria's lithium reserves could be worth a staggering $34 billion. This created a buzz domestically and internationally. Soon, rural communities that have seen small-scale mining of tin or gemstones now found foreign buyers seeking lithium. Artisanal miners, often impoverished locals with picks and shovels, started digging pits in search of the new gold. For example, in parts of Kaduna State, informal miners descend 250-foot deep hand-dug shafts day after day in search of lithium-bearing rocks. A perilous work that sometimes pays just around 4,000 Nigerian naira, roughly $2.5 after an exhausting day of labor. What is driving this flurry, of course, is the global lithium demand. Nigerians' finds coincided with a period when lithium prices were surging and importers were scouring the globe for supply. Sacks of Nigerian lithium ore began to quietly make their way onto ships. By 2022, word of Nigeria's lithium's potential had reached the highest levels of government, and there was a sense that Nigeria must take advantage of this boom. Nigeria's leaders signaled early that they wanted to do things differently with lithium. So in mid-2023, as the new administration took office, President Bela Tinubu directed the Ministry of Solid Minerals to only grant mining licenses if companies establish local processing facilities. The philosophy was clear: Nigeria should not just ship out rocks, it should refine them into battery-grade material domestically, capturing more value and creating industries. Nigeria had reportedly rejected Tesla, the American EV manufacturer's approach, with an offer to purchase raw lithium for its batteries in 2022, essentially telling Tesla, come invest in processing here if you want our lithium. So when Tinubu took office, the government allegedly wanted to capture more value with the country's resources. This bold stance, if accurate, sent a message that Nigeria didn't want to repeat the mistakes of just exporting raw materials for others to refine, a painful irony Nigeria knows too well. To walk the talk, Nigeria moved to set up its first lithium processing plants. So in May 2024, Kaduna State Governor and officials with much fanfare inaugurated a lithium ore processing plant at Kagingbi village in Kaduna State. This was a joint venture between the state government, which owned 30% stake, and a Chinese company called Mingxin Mineral Separation Nigeria Limited. This facility was touted as the beginning of Nigeria's lithium-based industrialization. It was supposed to process ore into lithium concentrate, a higher value product, at a rate of 1,500 metric tons per day, generating an estimated 1 to 1.5 billion naira, about $650,000 to $980,000 in revenue per year. It also dangled the promise of thousands of jobs in rural areas that desperately needed them. The concentrate, in line with global reality, was intended for export to China, which handles the refining into battery chemicals, since China currently refines the majority of the world's lithium and produces most lithium-ion batteries. However, 1 year on, the cracks in this model began to show. Investigation in mid-2025 found the Kingimi plant was not fully operational yet. Local villagers complained that none of the promised benefits, which are jobs, improved schools, or health clinic, better roads, had even materialized. The plant sat largely idle with only a skeleton crew. Community leaders said no formal community development agreement required by Nigerian law had been established with them. It also wasn't clear where the plant's lithium feedstock was coming from, raising suspicions that it might eventually rely on buying from informal miners, potentially incentivizing more illegal mining. Running parallel to former efforts is the burgeoning problem of illegal lithium mining and smuggling. Nigeria's large size and historically under-regulated mining sector make it challenging to police. Much of Nigeria's mining, which are gold, gems, and etc., has long been informal. Lithium has now been added to that mix. Middlemen, some foreign, some local, roam villages offering quick cash for any lithium ore. While all these case studies show how lithium mining on the continent of Africa has gotten off to a rocky start, global powers are enjoying the bumpy ride as they take full advantage of the chaos at play. In the scramble for African lithium, world powers are maneuvering for position, much like rival prospectors taking claims on a gold field. The dynamics of this contest reveal much about the shifting geopolitical landscape of the 21st century, where control of critical minerals is becoming as strategically important as oil or gas. It is impossible to overstate China's lead in the global battery supply chain. China took an early and aggressive interest in transition minerals needed for EVs and renewable energy, and lithium is no exception. Chinese companies from the private and state sector have scoured the globe, securing lithium assets from Australia to South America to Africa. In Africa, as our case studies showed, Chinese firms have invested in Zimbabwe's largest projects, made a play for DRC's biggest deposits, dominated Namibia's early production, and poured money into Nigeria's nascent industry. These moves are part of a broader Chinese strategy: secure upstream resources to feed its downstream factories. China refines over 60% of the world's lithium and produces the majority of battery cells. By having direct stakes in mines, Chinese companies can ensure a steady supply of raw material, often shipping it home for processing. Financially, China backed its companies through various initiatives, providing cheap loans for resource projects. This allowed Chinese bids to often outcompete Western ones, as seen in DRC, where Chinese offers came tied with infrastructure sweeteners and quick cash, whereas Western companies like Australia's AVZ couldn't match that scale. China's ability to deploy capital quickly, like the $678 million in Zimbabwe in 1 year alone, won it favor with some African governments hungry for investment. For a while, Western countries seemed to lag, perhaps complacent or distracted. But as EV adoption soared and as geopolitical tension with China rose, the US and Europe have awoken to the vulnerability of relying on China-dominated supply chains. This has led to new policies and partnerships aimed at securing critical minerals in a more diversified way. In 2022, the US, EU, and allies formed the Mineral Security Partnership (MSP) to coordinate securing of critical minerals like lithium from trusted sources. The European Union launched its Global Gateway Initiative, partly an answer to Belt and Road, and signed memorandums with countries like Namibia to develop supply chains for green minerals. A darker side of the global play is how corruption can be a tool of influence. Some foreign companies have shown a willingness to cut deals that involve under-the-table sweeteners. Ultimately, control of lithium and other critical minerals means jobs and tech leadership in the clean economy. This is why China and Western countries are battling for dominance. Western governments now treat this almost as a national security issue, Conversely, China fears being cut off from resources by Western influence, like if African nations decided to favor Western partnership to reduce China's dominance. We are witnessing something akin to the Cold War non-allied movement scenario. African countries can potentially leverage competition to their benefits, extracting better deals or infrastructure investment by playing one side against the other. But it could also rekindle proxy dynamics where external powers support certain local elites or policies that favor them. The new game for lithium is underway. The winners of this game will not only secure economic advantage but also help set the rules for how resources are traded. The big question though is, what will this mean for African countries?